What's good, everyone? This is Monaro and welcome to my channel. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, but I had to step away from YouTube because of my health. Today we'll be going over chapters 39 to 52, and I hope you enjoy. Jon sends Val to the north to find Tormund Giantsbane and offer him and his followers shelter south of the wall. Bowen Marsh, Septon Celador, and Othel Yarwick talk to Jon with various complaints. They disapprove of Leathers as Castle Black's master-at-arms, Satin as Jon's steward, and his decision to negotiate with Tormund and allow him and his men through the wall. They are also nervous about the fact Jon is keeping 2 corpses in the ice cells, and react with outrage and horror when Jon reveals he is waiting for them to rise, ignoring Jon's argument that the Watch knows next to nothing about the Whites or their masters and need to learn more if they are to defeat them. Overlooking their protests, Jon tells them of a large group of wildlings making for Hardhome at the east coast north of the wall, following the witch mother Mole, who claims they will find ships there to bring them across the narrow sea. Jon fears they will die there, but when he gets only indifference from the others at the prospect of thousands of dead wildlings, Jon finally loses patience. Angrily asking if they don't realize the truth or are just ignoring it, Jon points out that if they do nothing, the wildlings at Hardhome will die in their thousands, and when they are dead, in time they will rise up again with blue eyes and cold hands, and the others will have thousands more whites under their control to send to the wall. Still on board the Salasori Karan, Tyrion jousts on Penny's pretty pig for the amusement of the crew in hopes of sweetening their mood, while the ship has been floating becalmed in the Gulf of Grief. Attempts to tow the cog north in hope of finding a breeze using small rowing boats have been unsuccessful. Tyrion and Penny are talking when the ship suddenly starts to move. Everyone cheers until they notice the storm front looming on the horizon. Macarro states that this is the storm from his visions, the reason that the ship won't reach Karth. During the storm, the main mast breaks, crippling the ship. Macarro and others are swept overboard. The captain and the cook die, and Tyrion is wounded from a splinter. For 19 days, the ship barely manages to stay afloat as food and water dwindle and the sun beats down on them relentlessly. Then, a sail turns up on the horizon, reigniting hope in them until Jorah realizes it's a slaver ship. A winter snowstorm has hit Winterfell. Roose Bolton comments that the northern gods do not favor Stannis as he is at the mercy of the weather while they are sheltered in Winterfell. His men cheer, but Theon does not join in, and notes that the phrase "do not join in" either, unfamiliar with the North that has claimed 3 of their lives already. Wyman Manderley is eating at a feast of porridge while Hardwood Stout and Horsebane Umber chat. Theon spent the whole last night awake dreaming of escape, but ultimately decides he has nowhere to go. He is a ruined man in a ruined castle, and this is where he belongs. The bard Abel plays the Dornish man's wife with one of his women beating a drum, but he switches the lyrics to a Northman instead. Theon fears that this will be seen as a spite to the Boltons, cost the man his life, angering Ramsay, and getting Theon flayed as a result. But when both of the Boltons laugh, the others see that it is safe, so they laugh as well and join in with the Bowdy song. His thoughts fall to the fake Arya, taking note that she has remained locked away in her room. There are whispers that Ramsay keeps her chained naked to the bed, but then Theon believes that it is only the guards that keep her there. He has seen bruises on her body as Sour Allen has assigned Theon as Jane's handmaid. Theon told her that Ramsay only hurts people when they make him angry, so she should do as he says and no harm will come to her. But she only cried and called him Theon, and he corrected her, telling her that his name is Reek. Rowan, one of the bard's women, comes up to Theon and asks him about his exploits, telling him that Abel can make a song about his capture of Winterfell. She questions him on how he was able to conquer Winterfell so easily, wondering if there's a secret entrance or another way that he used to get in. Theon thinks that this is another ploy from Ramsay as he desires Rowan, so he runs away, leaving her. Outside, there is a snowball fight between boys from the Rills and Barrowton, while squires build snowmen along the battlements. Theon observes that a new stable has been built, twice as large as the one that was burned down. He wanders through the castle and passes Rickard Riswell, cuddling on one of Abel's women. He observes that they have few provisions to last the winter in the keep, but thinks that Stannis is in the same situation. He eventually arrives at the weirwood, kneeling before the heart tree. There he apologizes for something and asks for something that he is unsure of. Strength? He hears someone crying and leaves, thinking there are ghosts in Winterfell, and he is one of them. Theon returns and sees that to command the snowmen, the squires have built 12 snowy lords, including ones resembling Lord Wyman Manderly, Lord Hardwood Stout, Lady Barbary Dustin, and Horsebane Umber. Lady Dustin asks Theon to convince Ramsay to treat Arya better. The Northmen love the Starks and hate the Boltons, remaining loyal only out of fear. The tears of Arya Stark will upset them and do Roose and Ramsay more harm than anything Stannis could do. Inside the crypts, they find that some of the dead king's swords are missing. A bad omen, Theon thinks, as the swords are said to protect the crypts and keep the spirits of the dead from wandering. Dustin asks Theon why he loves the Starks, and Theon reluctantly explains he always wanted to be one, but never could. Dustin remarks that they are similar in that regard, explaining how Brandon Stark took her maidenhead and was enamored with her rather than his betrothed Catelyn Stark. Rickard Stark arranged a betrothal of his eldest son to Catelyn Stark, a match that served his ambitions more than one to Lady Barbary, a daughter of one of his own northern vassals. After Brandon's betrothal to Catelyn, the ambitious Lord Riswell wanted Barbary to marry Eddard, but after Rickard and Brandon were both murdered by the Mad King, Eddard fulfilled his older brother's betrothal to Catelyn to ensure support from Riverrun during Robert's rebellion. Left to marry Lord Willem Dustin, she blames Ned for Lord Dustin's death at the Tower of Joy during Robert's rebellion. She felt slighted that Eddard merely buried her husband in Dorne, yet went to great lengths to transport his sister's body north to be buried at Winterfell. She claims that she intends to seize Ned Stark's bones, delayed by the Ironborn's occupation of Moat Cailin, and feed them to her dogs rather than let them be buried in the crypts. On the way back up, she tells him to repeat nothing to the Boltons. Theon swears he will not, to which she says he has been trained well, leaving him there. Stannis' hosts depart from Deepwood Motte. Asha is chained and carried on at the back of the baggage train under guard by Alysanne Mormont. Stannis means to bring her to Winterfell to show off the Kraken's daughter as his captive and a sign of his strength. They believe the 300-mile march through the Wolfswood should take them about 15 days to Winterfell. She bent her knee at Deepwood Motte, but thinks to herself that others have bent the knee before, such as Balon, who rose again to fight another day. Wise advice years earlier from her father. As part of her surrender, she hopes that Stannis will spare the rest of her Ironborn their lives, which he does, imprisoning them at Deepwood Motte. She listens to talk between the Northmen, seeing their pride in their king, though she predicts many, if not all, will die in a siege attempt at Winterfell. Sir Justin Massey takes a courteous nature with Asha, treating her well. She believes he is after her lands, but takes his company over being left alone. After a few nights, she is brought to Stannis and tries to treat with him. She says that his brother Robert Baratheon was renowned for turning his foes into friends, but learns that she should not speak his brother's name as it angers Stannis. The snow begins to take a toll on the passage of the southern men. However, the Northmen are used to this weather and proceed quickly. Later, she hears the Queen's men, worshippers of the Lord of Light, begin to contemplate a sacrifice to appease their god and blow the storm away. Stannis does not listen to them, nor does he listen to the pleas to make camp and wait out the storm. After 15 days, the estimated time of arrival, they have only made half the distance through the 9 days of storm. After 30 days, they have yet to reach Winterfell. Morgan Little, the man who nearly slayed her at Deepwood Motte, comes to apologize, but only for calling her a cunt, not for nearly killing her. Later, they reach a small crofters' village where they make camp and try to catch some fish. Asha realizes that Stannis is now a gaunt figure, having lost much weight on the march. They are encamped now and locked in by snow, unable to move. Worse, they have almost no provisions and are starving. Daenerys Targaryen wakes up beside Daario Naharis. She is hesitant about her upcoming wedding. Daario asks her to marry him instead, but truly he knows that she cannot and will not. Outside, the Yunkai are massing more ships, building siege weapons to throw rocks at the city. However, no rams or siege towers are built, as the siege is intended to cause famine and disease to force Meereen to succumb. Daario introduces Dany to 3 Dornishmen who say they have specific gifts for the queen: Quentyn Martell, Garrus Drinkwater, and Archibald Ironwood, who defected to Daario, reveal themselves to her. A parchment is presented describing a secret pact of alliance between Dorne and the Targaryens, signed by Willem Darry and Oberyn Martell, that would be sealed by a marriage between Viserys and Arianne Martell. Dany laughs when she learns who Quentyn is, as his mercenary nickname was Frog, and she remembers the story of a frog turning into a prince. Dany remembers Quake's earlier prophecy. The glass candles are burning. Soon comes the pale mare, and after her the others: Kraken and Dark Flame, Lion and Griffin, the Sun's Son and the Mummer's Dragon. Trust none of them. Remember the Undying. Beware the perfumed Seneschal. She recognizes Quentyn in the arms of House Martell as the Sun's Son she must be wary about. Dany refuses to marry Quentyn. The Dornishmen make one last plea before Dany's wedding, which she denies, and then goes through her marriage to Hisdar Zolorak. Queen Selyse arrives at Castle Black with Shireen, Patchface, Axel Florent, and others, all on their way to the Night Fort. They are accompanied by Tycho Nestoris, an emissary of the Iron Bank of Braavos. Jon warns Selyse that the Night Fort is still mostly in ruins and advises her that they may be most comfortable at Eastwatch by the sea. The Queen says that they are not safe there and insists on going to the Night Fort. Then one appears, startling the ladies. The giant speaks a few kind words but mangles them. Jon tells the women he is only just learning the common tongue, as all giants speak the old tongue. One's laugh startles and frightens the group, causing Sir Patrick to draw his sword. Jon warns him to never draw his sword against the giant, as he is protected by guest rights here, which Jon says they still honor in the north, though the south may not. Jon then offers to give Tycho a tour atop the wall, but he prefers to speak with Jon now, preferably in a warm room. Tycho tells Jon that the Iron Throne has ceased all debt payments to the Iron Bank. Jon thinks this must be madness on the part of the Lannisters. He thinks that the Iron Bank may want to support Stannis in his war to ensure that the debt is eventually paid. Jon asks for a favor: to borrow ships and a loan to keep the Night's Watch fed until spring. Tycho says this is impossible, but after a few hours of drinking and haggling, they strike a deal. With the 3 ships added to the Eastwatch fleet, Jon counts that they now have 11 ships. He hopes to bring the wildlings down from Hardhome around the wall in order to save them and not have them become more whites enthralled to the others. However, he is unsure if Mother Mole will be desperate enough to trust her people to the men of the Night's Watch. He discusses things further with Tycho. He asks after Maester Aemon, Gilly, and Sam, but Tycho knows nothing, and Jon can really hope that they have reached Old Town. They talk about an unknown fleet prowling the narrow sea and rumors of dragons coming from the east, Jon joking that a dragon would warm things up. Tycho says sternly that his people are descending from those who fled the dragon lords of Valyria, and they do not joke lightly about such, so Jon apologizes. They make their way to the common hall, where Axel Florent asks Jon to see Val. Jon surmises that he must know the woman is gone. He then excuses himself and leaves, pondering the dangers of the agreement with Tycho, uncertain if the Watch will ever be able to repay the Iron Bank and thus avoid consequences. But Jon knows that between being bankrupt and dead, he made the right choice. He also takes another moment to marvel on the stupidity of the Lannisters. The Iron Bank is notorious for deposing royalty who don't repay their debts, and he knows that if Stannis makes a deal with the Braavosi, he will acquire enough money to hire numerous sellsword companies to bribe as many lords as he needs and keep his men fed, armed, and supplied. Jon muses that unless Stannis is lying dead beneath the walls of Winterfell, he may just have won the Iron Throne. He goes to sleep but is awoken by Mully, who tells him that a girl has arrived on a dying horse. Jon's thoughts instantly go to Melisandre's vision, and he giddily thinks that Arya may have come to him as prophesied. He also thinks about plans to keep Arya safe. She cannot stay at the wall, for Stannis will just marry her off to one of his vassals so as to gain a claim to Winterfell, and Jon doesn't know but fears what Melisandre may want with her. Jon speculates that he might be able to convince Tycho to make arrangements to have Arya fostered with some noble family in Braavos or the Free Cities. When he meets her, however, to his disappointment, Jon sees that the girl in question is not Arya. She is too old. He recognizes her as Alice Karstark, having met her before when they were both children, when her father brought her to Winterfell in hope of negotiating a marriage between her and Robb. She warns him not to let Cregan Karstark take her back with him when he arrives, as he and his father, Arnulf Karstark, intend to force her into marrying Cregan. She also learns the truth about her father's execution from Jon, and is unsurprised to learn that Robb killed him for murdering prisoners in a fit of rage. Her father was a brooding man, and her uncles are no better. Alice asks Jon if there is still a blood feud between them after the death of her father, but he assures her that the men of the Night's Watch hold no grudges. She tells him that after Jaime Lannister killed her 2 elder brothers and her betrothed at the Battle of the Whispering Wood, she and her brother Harry are the rightful heirs to their titles. However, Harrion has been a captive for more than a year. Arnulf only declared Carhold for Stannis in the hope it would provoke the Lannisters to execute Harrion. If that happened, Alice would be heir to the Carhold, at which point Cregan would marry her, get a child from her, and then get rid of her. Jon offers to write to Stannis about the matter on her behalf, but Alice reveals that the Karstarks are playing Stannis false. They have long been in league with Roose Bolton and are only waiting for his word to betray Stannis. Alice entreats Jon to protect her, pleading that he is the only hope she has left. Arya wakes up after entering into Nymeria again. She remembers being feared, but only when she dreams. Arya is still in the house of Black and White in Braavos. She has been blinded to train her to use her other senses, recognize lies from the tone of voice, walk and work without seeing, even fight. She calls herself Blind Beth now. She goes over her list of names, but remembers that that was someone else, not her, not Blind Beth. The kindly man asks her his usual question about 3 things she has learned. Arya learns to play the lying game with the waif. This time, however, she is blind, so instead she learns to use tone of voice to hear the lies. Arya has gotten better at speaking High Valyrian, though the kindly man insists she learn the languages of Lys and Pentos as well. As she continues to learn her skills as a blind girl, the kindly man tells her that she has 5 senses and she should learn to use the other 4. An acolyte gets into a duel of staffs with her, teasing her throughout the lesson. She reminisces that she liked being the cat of the canals. She thinks about when she killed Darian, the deserter from the Night's Watch. The kindly man told her that they are not gods to judge who lives or dies, They are the servants of him of many faces. He explains that they are death's instruments, not death itself. As she goes out to beg, the waif helps her to look the part, putting on a blindfold and giving her poxmark scars to make her look ugly. As she goes out into Braavos past the Inn of the Green Eel, she goes over the areas where she has begged in her mind. Arya crosses the bloody bridge and makes her way to Pinto at the end of Ragman's Harbor near the edge of the drowned town. She hears that 2 Lysine pirate ships, the Good Heart and the Elephant, are driven north by a storm and found wildlings at Hardhome. The wildlings were eager to board the ships that they were prophesied by the witch, and the pirates took the women and children on board, yet meant to sell them as slaves. The Good Heart was damaged in another storm and was forced to make for Braavos, where the Sea Lord seized the ship since slave trade is forbidden in Braavos. Arya regularly has wolf dreams, and it is revealed that she has also learned to enter a cat. She uses knowledge gained through the cat's eyes to impress the kindly man, telling him that she knows it has been him who is hitting her, but without mentioning the cat. Apparently, this completes her blind training, because when she opens her eyes again, she sees a candle flame, and she has never seen anything so beautiful before. One of Roger Wiswell's men has been found dead at the inner wall of Winterfell. Theon hears Lord Roger Wiswell declare that he must have fallen off the wall drunk, but he suspects it might have been murder, as do some others. Roose Bolton and his host are still stuck inside Winterfell's walls due to the relentless snowstorms. They expect Stannis' forces to attack them, but have no idea how close he may be due to the storms. Tensions rise among the people inside Winterfell, with no one quite certain whether it is a good idea to wait passively for Stannis or instead pursue him outside. It doesn't help that food is somewhat scarce and distributed quite unevenly. Holly, one of Abel the Bard's washerwomen, sits down next to Theon, who is upset that she has touched him. She asks him about the crypts, and a mistrusting Theon comes to the conclusion that she, Abel, and the other women want out of Winterfell. Theon sympathizes, but he fears the wrath of Ramsay Bolton and prefers not to get involved. The next morning, Aenys Frey Squire is found dead outside the snow. Later on that day, another man, a crossbowman sworn to House Flint, is found dead with a crushed skull, presumably from a horse kick. Nevertheless, the suspicions and tensions keep growing to the point that open quarreling happens among the host lords inside the Great Hall. Some are tired of waiting for Stannis and want to attack him. A fight nearly breaks out as Sir Hostine and Aenys Frey blame Wyman Manderly for the deaths of their 3 kin, Rhaegar, Jared, and Simon. It almost comes to a duel before Roger Wiswell and Barbary Dustin calm them down, though Roose does nothing throughout the near altercation, and Theon sees something new in Roose's eyes for the first time, a hint of fear. Soon the newly rebuilt stables collapses, killing 2 men and 26 horses. Roose Bolton gives orders for the surviving horses to be brought inside the walls of Winterfell. A more suspicious death is discovered, that of Yellow Dick. His namesake is stuffed in his mouth so hard that 3 teeth have been broken. This death is taken more seriously, as it cannot be confused with an accident, and to boot, he is one of Ramsay Bolton's bastard boys. Theon considers that a hooded man whom he meets may be responsible for the murder. Theon is later ushered to see Roose by Steelshanks Walton. Roose says that Theon has been seen where all the murders have occurred. Theon is freed from the suspicion due to his weakened physical and psychological state, as remarked by Lady Dustin and Roger Wiswell. It is now, however, undeniable that someone has been committing murders, possibly at Stannis' behest. The resulting suspicion flames the tension between the Freys and the Northmen, who are reminded of their role at the Red Wedding and the fact that they are surrounded by northern houses who all lost people at the Red Wedding and have more than good reason to despise and do harm to the Freys. Suddenly, a war horn and drum is sounded, and the men inside the walls begin to believe that Stannis has arrived. Theon goes to pray in the Godswood, seeing hints of Bran's very face in the weirwood, hearing it whisper his name. Holly, Rowan, and a third washerwoman appear, claiming to have come for him. Theon believes that they are behind the murders and want to kill him now, but they deny his suspicions and insist that there will be no more hurt for him, but instead a nice quick death. But first, he must see Abel. All remaining crewmen and passengers of the Cersei Koran are sold into slavery in a Yunkish camp near Meereen. Tyrion and Penny are sold together to Yazan Zo Kagaz, an immensely fat Yunkish, and put under the charge of his retainer called Nurse. Though a Westerosi sellsword tries hard to buy them, Tyrion suspects this is because the sellsword knows him and wants to claim Cersei's bounty on his head. Tyrion sees Jorah Mormont brought on the auction block behind them. The knight tried to fight off the slavers and was beaten almost to the point of death. His face was so swollen as to be almost unrecognizable. Tyrion convinces Nurse that Mormont is an essential part of their show and needs to be bought too. Jorah fought bravely, killing 3 of the slavers, before being captured and beaten so severely. The fight went out of him once he heard that Daenerys had wed his Dar Zolorak. Once purchased, they are brought to Yazan's pavilion, where they meet some of his other treasures and his most prized possession, Sweets, a hermaphrodite. They are also fitted with slave collars, which Tyrion does not mind as he observes that collars can be removed. There, they find out that the sellsword who also tried to buy them was Brown Ben Plum, one of the second sons. In the evening, Tyrion and Penny are summoned to perform a joust for the guests of Yazan, including the Yunkish Supreme Commander, Yurkaz Zo Youngzak. The joust is well received, following which they are to pour wine and water for the guests. One of the men heard Tyrion's boast of his skills at Savas. Tyrion plays against him and wins, angering the man. He also plays Ben Plum as his master's bet on him. He wins 4 of 5 matches and earns much gold for his master. As a reward for their great jousting performance, Yazan announces they are to repeat it in the Great Pit of Daznak in front of tens of thousands of people. Jaime arrives at Raventree Hall under siege by Janos Bracken. The siege here is much smaller than the one at Riverrun, as the intentions are not to storm the castle, but rather to starve them out. The siege has been going on for 6 months, and there is not much hope of rescue for Titus Blackwood, as it is only a matter of time. Jaime meets first with Lord Janos, who is in an intimate position with Hildy. After she leaves, Jaime inquires as to what Janos seeks from the situation. Janos insists on acquiring a quarter of the House Blackwood lands, saying that they were stolen from them long ago, and that Tywin Lannister promised them to Janos if he subdued the Blackwoods. Jaime chides the Bracken man, saying that they were once an enemy of the king when they sided with the Starks, and keeping his head is more than enough compensation for what the mountain did to his lands. Bracken protests that he will keep faith with the crown as he did with the Starks. Janos adds that 12 good men of his died at the Red Wedding with Robb Stark, and he bent the knee because he saw no point in fighting on for a lost cause. Jaime remarks that Lord Janos is a prudent man on hearing this, yet privately thinks Blackwood might be considered more honorable. Jaime then goes to parley with Titus Blackwood. Inside, he sees the castle's massive weirwood tree, from which the castle derives its name. The tree is black and leafless. Titus tells Jaime that it is the fault of the Brackens, poisoned and barren for 1,000 years, and in another 1,000 it will turn to stone as weirwoods never rot. As they treat, Jaime tells him that he does not have to physically kneel to him. They agree to a confession, fealty, pardon, and financial sum as well as lands. Finally, they discuss the matter of a hostage, and Jaime asks for Bethany, his daughter, but Tytos refuses as she is his only daughter. They eventually agree to sending Hoster, as he is a bookish boy who may enjoy his time in King's Landing and all the books there. Jaime then leaves quickly as he has appointments in Riverrun and King's Landing. The boy is ready to leave with him within an hour. Before departing, he meets Ser Janos to tell him the resolution, but also informs him that a daughter of his is to attend to the queen in the capital, as she too is to be a hostage. Jaime rides to the village Pennytree with Hoster, who tells him of the history of the lands and animosity between the Blackwoods and Brockens. In the village stands an ancient oak tree with pennies nailed to it, the namesake of the village. There, Brienne of Tarth finds them, bandaged on her face and with the sword Oathkeeper. Brienne claims that she has found Sansa and that Jaime must accompany her alone, or else Sandor Clegane will kill the girl. Melisandre is conducting the marriage ceremony between Alice Karstark and Sigorn, the new Magnar of Thenn. Only a few brothers of the Night's Watch attend, along with Queen Selyse and her queen's men, and a few kingsmen that Stannis Baratheon left behind. Meanwhile, Jon Snow has ordered Clytus to dispatch a raven to Deepwood Motte in order to warn Stannis of Arnulf Karstark's treachery. Cregan Karstark followed his niece Alice to Castle Black a day after her arrival. Jon met him before he could reach the fortress and imprisoned Cregan and his men in the ice cells of the wall. Knowing that Stannis will execute Cregan when he learns of the betrayal, Jon tries to get Cregan to take the Black and accept Alice's claim to Carhold. Cregan will not hear about it, but Jon thinks time spent in the ice cell might change his mind. At Alice and Sigurd's wedding feast, a raven brings a message that the relief fleet for Hardhome, delayed due to bad weather, has now left Eastwatch by the sea. Cotter Pike is commanding the fleet, and he left behind Glendon Hewitt in charge of Eastwatch. Jon is unsure of Glendon's loyalty due to his association with Janos Slynt and Alliser Thorne. Axel Thorne once again presses Jon to release the whereabouts of Val, as he intends to marry her, but Jon scoffs at the idea. The wedding feast comes to an abrupt end when a horn is sounded twice, announcing wildlings. Jon knows that Val has succeeded in her mission and that Tormund Giantsbane has come at last. Hisdar holds a feast in Meereen with the Yunkish lords and sellsword captains in attendance to sign the peace and celebrate the imminent reopening of the fighting pits. However, the sellswords and slaves from Yunkai and its allies are still besieging Meereen. Just as in Meereen, the bloody flux has been affecting the Yunkish troops as well. Daenerys is upset that the Yunkai are holding a slave market just outside the city, but Hisdar tells her it is only for a time and to let them have their show, and they will have their peace, with Yunkai keeping their slave trade and Meereen remaining out of it. The Yunkai have brought representatives of the 4 sellsword companies serving them: the Tattered Prince for the Windblown, Gylo Regan for the Long Lances, Bloodbeard for the Company of the Cats, and Brown Ben Plum for the Second Sons. Daenerys is relieved by Daario's absence, since she knows that he would be furious with Plum. An exchange of 7 hostages has been arranged in order to ensure a measure of peace during the ceremonies. The 4 sellsword captains and the 3 Yunkish nobles present Yurkaz Zoyunzak, Supreme Commander, and 2 others, are understood to be Daenerys' hostages for the time being, while Daenerys offers 7 of her own to the Yunkish siege camp in exchange, Hizdar's sister, 2 of his cousins, her blood rider Jogo, her admiral Grolio, her unsullied captain Hero, and Dario Naharis. Skahaz Mokandak, the Safepate, is absent as well, having been replaced as commander of the Brazen Beasts by Hizdar Zolorak's cousin, Magar's Zolorak. Were he not a hostage, Dario might be causing trouble. He is unhappy about Dany's wedding to Hizdar, and he got furious when Quentyn Martell revealed that his group of Westerosi windblowns had been ordered to defect to Meereen. Dario nearly slew them all in his rage, but Grey Worm intervened and stopped him, choosing instead to imprison the group of windblowns. Brown Ben comes up to her and explains his defection, saying that it is natural for sellsword to change sides if they believe that it will improve their odds of survival. He claims that the Second Sons were troubled when they learned that Daenerys could not use her dragons to help fight the Yunkish forces. After he leaves, she asks Sir Barristan Selmy his opinion, as he was hiding and listening as always. He advises her that Brown Plum is quite truthful, and confirms that it is not wise to place trust in a sellsword. Seeking ways to make up for the loss of the Second Sons, Dany asks Sir Barristan about the possibility of finding a rival leader in the group that might want to remove Brown Ben Plum. Barristan thinks it possible, but doesn't know for certain. She then mentions the other 3 mercenary companies, prompting Barristan to offer to arrange a meeting with Gylo Regan or the Tattered Prince if she wants to. Dany says that this is not the time or the place, as there are too many watchful eyes about. Barristan admits that he is not the best man for such work, and that back in Westeros, it would have been Littlefinger or the Spider to have done this kind of work. Dany's mind turns back to the captured Westerosi Turncloaks. She realizes that by freeing one of the Windblowns, she might establish negotiations with their leader, the Tattered Prince, and perhaps sway them to her cause. She first suggests and later commands Sir Barristan send back the woman, Maris, as a gesture of her regard, knowing that their captain will get the message. She wants to contact the Longlances and the Company of the Cat as well. Barristan advises against dealing with Bloodbeard of the Company of the Cat, however. He says that he reminds him of the Ninepenny Kings, that he is much too greedy and much too dishonorable to be an asset. Daenerys feels that such men might be the easiest to sway, but decides to trust his counsel on this matter. She then summons Quentyn to speak further at Sir Barristan's suggestion. He still believes that the Dornish envoys are their best option for returning to Westeros, though Dany will not abandon her city. She speaks with him and brings him to the dragon pit to see her children. She introduces Quentyn to Viserion and Rhaegal, telling him that Drogon is away hunting and that she is a dragon as well. Dany gives Quentyn another piece of advice to leave Meereen, saying that he is not safe here, that men like Dario and Hizdar could see him as a threat and eliminate him. He boldly, perhaps foolishly, declines. Dany then retires to bed where Hizdar is waiting for her, drunk and lustful. She allows him to have his way with her before he passes out. Missandei comes in and hears that the queen is unhappy and comforts her, talking of her home, Noth. Eventually, Daenerys falls asleep, though she dreads the morrow when the fighting pits will reopen and blood will be spilled. Theon Greyjoy is with some of the Spear Wives, Rowan as well as Abel. He tells them that it is madness to try to escape, as Ramsay Bolton will chase them and hunt them down with his dogs. Abel replies that Stannis must be close by the sounds of the horns, and it is unlikely Ramsay would ride out into that. Theon also begs that he not be allowed to fall back into Ramsay's hands alive, to which Squirrel replies, Abel's word. Hosting Frey barges into the halls, announcing that little Walder, son of his brother Merritt, has been killed. Theon looks at the spearwives, but Rowan replies that this is no work of theirs. Big Walder implicates the Manderley men, saying that the boy went out to get some silver owed to him. The dispute turns into a spar of words, and when Lord Wyman Manderley insults both the dead boy and House Frey simultaneously, Hosting Frey draws his sword in a blind fury and attacks Manderley, who is sliced under his chins and collapses. His knights leap to defend him, and a vicious and bloody fight breaks out. In the end, 6 White Harbor men lie dead, 2 Frey men, as well as one of Ramsay's bastard boys, Luton. Roose and Ramsay quell the tension by telling the men present if they want blood, they should turn their anger on Stannis. Hosteen replies that once they bring Roose Stannis' head, they will come for Wyman's. Roose asks Abel to play them a song, and the Freys leave. It is then that Rowan grasps Theon's arm, telling him that the time must be now and that Abel can fend for himself. The plan is to dress the fake Arya up as Squirrel, while the real Squirrel climbs away down the wall. They find the girl in her room, where she is terrified to leave, thinking this is a trap set up by Ramsay. The girl tells the washerwoman that she has been trained. She won't escape. Ramsay does not need to chop off her feet. They finally get her into Squirrel's clothes, and Theon tells her to follow Holly closely and not to run. As they get to the gate, they see some guards. Holly seduces one and kills him in the process, while Frenya struggles and kills the other. Jane lets out a scream in the process, revealing them. Frenya waits at the bottom and fights the rest of the kneelers that come to catch them, while Holly and the others get to the top of the wall. Holly then realizes that Frenya has the rope just before being killed by arrows. Theon thinks that if they are caught now, they will be brought to Ramsay and tortured. He then throws himself and Jane over the battlements. Daenerys bathes in preparation for her visit with her husband to Meereen's fighting pits. Sir Barristan Selmy tells her that the girl Maris, whom they set free, said that the Windblown were willing to join her cause if Dany gave the tattered prince Pentos. Dany cannot agree to pay this, as Illyrio is from that city and has helped her more than anyone. Her obligations are to him first. She then departs with her husband, and they arrive at the pits, where Strong Belwas eats a bowl of fried locusts. Hizdar tells his wife that they are tasty as well, but she declines, as Dany is not interested in the spicy food. There are 20,000 spectators in the pit. As Hizdar announces the fights, they chant her name, though they use the Giscari word for mother because they cannot pronounce her Westerosi name. Dany thinks to herself that it is not her they love, but the fighting. The first fight begins with a victory for the Spotted Cat, and there are many more after that. Following them, the first holly of the day begins with 2 dwarves jousting, one on a pig, the other on a dog. One dwarf has a shield painted in the colors of House Lannister, which amuses Daenerys. That one falls off the pig and is chased by the other on the dog when Hizdar tells Dany that they are about to loose the lions. She tells him this was not in their agreement, that the dwarves did not consent to this like the other fighters who died did, so she forbids that the lions slaughter the dwarves. Up next is a bout between Barcena Blackhair and a boar. The fight goes well until the boar's tusk rips her open from the knee to the crotch. The boar then jumps on her, pulling out her entrails, all to the displeasure of the crowd. Daenerys insists on leaving, as she is disgusted and no longer wants any parts of this. Strong Belwas becomes sick from his locusts, asking for a drink of milk. It is then that Drogon appears, his attention drawn by the blood and screams. His fires sear the boar before he eats it, and then Barcena. A man runs to try to kill the dragon, jabbing a spear into Drogon's neck before the dragon kills him. Hizdahr commands the rest of his spearmen to kill the dragon. Drogon roasts 2 spearmen, breaks the pitmaster in 2 with a swipe of his tail, and tears out the innards of another spearman. As Strong Belwaz is puking, Dany runs into the fighting pit in a mad state, hearing footsteps behind her. When she gets close, she fears that Drogon does not recognize her and will kill her. As he blows fire at her, she rolls under the flames, and she whips him until he finally allows her to mount him. She leaps onto his back, pulling out the spear. As she whips him again, he takes flight and tells him to go higher, watching as Meereen grows smaller below. Jon treats with Tormund Giantsbane. His 4,000 wildlings will be allowed past the wall, including mammoths and giants. They must leave 100 boys as hostages at Castle Black and yield all valuables to pay for food. The mammoths are to go the long way around through Eastwatch, while the rest are allowed to go through the gates. Jon accompanies Val to go see Queen Selyse to tell her of the bargain. The queen is excited and tells him that her husband will be proud. All the wildlings have to do is swear fealty to the king and convert to R'hllor. This is when Jon tells her that this was not part of the bargain, and Val adds that the free folk do not kneel. Selyse is quite upset about this. Val notices Shireen's facial disfigurements, noting that it is gray death. Jon tells her that it is not always fatal, but she is adamant that it is death, and that the baby monster must be taken out of that tower at once and closer to her own person. She insists that Shireen is dead, and that the queen and apparently Jon cannot see it. He then goes to the top of the wall, wondering what has happened to Mance Rayder and if he has found his sister Arya. Up here he meets Torgon Flint, one of the first Flints, and Brandon Norrie, the Norrie clan chief. Jon tells them that the wildlings are coming through, though they are not happy about it because of past conflicts. He tells them that they must forgive crimes of the past if they are to live together. They are worried about their lands, but Jon tells them that wildlings are to remain on the wall in the abandoned castles. Bowen Marsh sees this agreement as a betrayal of Jon's vows to the Night's Watch. However, Jon says that he is sworn to defend the realms of men and asks him whether the people beyond the wall don't count as men. Thus, it is his intent to use all available resources to defend the realm of men against the others. Cersei is still a prisoner of the faith. She wonders when Jaime will be coming for her, in addition to wondering what has happened to Loras Tyrell. As last she heard, he lay dying from his wounds on Dragonstone. She only ever sees 3 people, which are her jailers Septa Unella, Septa Moel, and Septa Scalera. Her last visitor was Qyburn. She hates all 3 of them as much as those she assumes have betrayed her, blaming Osney Kennelblack, Orton Merryweather, Harris Swift, Orain Waters, and Grand Maester Pycelle. She questions whether she should include Jaime in that group, but will not believe it. He would not abandon her, she assumes. She feels helpless and hates that emotion as she prays endlessly to the 7 gods, since that is what they want, but it helps not. At first she fights with her guards, but they are much stronger than she thought. They keep her up endlessly, never letting her sleep. Exhausted, she comes to know that she must confess. She asks to be taken to the High Septon to confess, where she admits to extramarital affairs. She says she has slept with Lancel and the Kettleblack brothers. She insists she did these things because she was afraid for her children, and these were her only means to secure the trust of these men. The High Septon still means to accuse her of high treason, incest, regicide, deicide, and all crimes that Osney Kettleblack admitted Cersei had a part in under torture. She manages to talk her way out of the charges of murdering the previous High Septon and Robert and bearing false witness against the Tyrell girl, and avoids the charges of incest by saying that these are lies that Stannis has made up in order to gain the Iron Throne, which satisfies the High Septon, since the Faith is eager to condemn Stannis' worship of a red demon. To get the real truth, though, the High Septon means to have her tried by the Faith or trial by combat, where Cersei would be represented by a knight of the King's Guard. He is unsure of all the crimes she has committed, so the only way to pick the truth from the false is to let the gods decide. She is allowed a visit by her uncle Kevin, who, though angry with her for corrupting Lancel, answers her questions. He tells her that Jaime is missing after his return from Raventree Hall, having disappeared with an unknown woman, though they assume it is Brienne. There is word of sellswords appearing over all the south. They do not have the strength to deal with them, though Mace Tyrell does. However, he is unwilling to do so until the matter with his daughter Margaery Tyrell is settled. Mace Tyrell is now the Hand, Paxter Redwine is the King's Admiral, and Randall Tarley is the Justiciar. The Tyrells brought up an army when their daughter was seized, although the High Septon has admitted the case against them is weak. Kevin brings worse news for Cersei. He relays Balon Swan's news of Myrcella's loss of an ear and Aerys Oakheart's death. Though Cersei is insistent that Myrcella's mutilation is Tyrion's doing, she sees a chance in the open position in the King's Guard and asks Kevin to approach Qyburn for a replacement. Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you for stopping by and watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to come back for more. Again, thank you for watching. Bye.